So lately, I've been thinking of Jesus's value. I've been thinking about how much he is worth. And a quote that has been on my heart just today is a quote by a man named Daniel Kolenda. And he said, "If I were to tell you that I would pay you $1,000,000 at the end of every week if you spent 1 hour a day with Jesus, you would do it." And Daniel Kolenda says the reason why you would do it, the reason why you would spend an hour with Jesus every day, is because you value the $1,000,000. And then he says, and the truth is, if you begin to value who Jesus is and see how much he is really worth, you will do it even if you don't get the $1,000,000. And this is so true. When we begin to see the value of Jesus, when we begin to see him as true treasure, we will truly begin to seek him with all of our heart. And we will give up everything to go after him. I've been thinking about this verse in Matthew, and it goes like this. I'm going to read it. It's Matthew 13:44. It says, "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field." And then it says, "which a man found and hid again. And from joy over it, he goes and sells all. He goes and sells all he has and buys the field." And so this is a depiction of what happens when we see the value of Jesus. When we see the value of who he is, when we see how much he is worth and how precious he is, we will sell all that we have in order to gain him, the true treasure. This is truly what happens when you see how much he's worth. You will give up everything for him. And I believe at least one of the things that begins to open up your eyes to his value, what begins to open up your eyes to how much he's worth, is to first realize that he gave up everything for you. Jesus paid the highest price to get you back. He paid the price of death and shed his blood to buy you back so that he could spend eternity with you. Why on earth would Jesus give up everything? Why would Jesus pay the highest price? Why would he die and shed his blood to buy you back, to spend eternity with you? Why did he do this? Because he values you. Jesus values you. And you might be like, well, what? Like, I thought that Jesus looked at us, or I thought God looked at us as just some wretched, pitiful sinner. I didn't know that he actually valued us. Are you sure that's even biblical? And it totally is. Matthew 6:26, Jesus literally conveys this. He says that God values us, that we are valuable to him, that we are worth more to him than just some birds, than just some animals that he actually takes care of. See, God tends to the animals, but then he says, how much more does God value you? So don't worry about just the daily needs of life. Don't even be consumed with anxiety about how you're going to clothe yourself and how you're going to feed yourself and how you're going to provide for yourself. Realize that God cares for you. He loves you and he wants to provide for you. So seek first him, his kingdom, and his righteousness. And these things will be given to you. This is what Matthew 6 is about. But the thing I'm trying to get at is God values you. Jesus values you. And because he values you, he gave up everything for you, for me. And I believe when we begin to see his love for us, when we begin to become sober to the fact that he values us, we in turn will begin to value him. And as we dive deeper and deeper and deeper into becoming sober to how much he is worth, to the fact that he is true treasure, we will give up everything to possess or gain possession of him. See, Jesus said himself in Luke 14, verse 33, he says, any one of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. It's a heavy verse, but it's so important. He says, any one of you who does not renounce, or in other words, any one of you who does not give up everything that he has cannot be my disciple. This is one of the invitations to even begin to be his disciple, to begin to even follow him. We must give up everything. Because the truth is, if you don't give up everything for him, then he'll never become your everything. But when you give up everything to gain possession of him, then he becomes your everything. And when he becomes your everything, you will see all of who he is begin to nourish all of who you are. When he becomes all, you will see all of him nourish all of you. And he will become the source of your life, the source of your joy, the source of your peace. He will become what nourishes you. And you will no longer have to go to A, B, and C to get your joy, to get your peace, to get your nourishment. Because he will become your joy and your peace and your nourishment. He will become the source of your life. Jesus alludes to this in John 15. He pretty much says, like a branch connecting itself to a vine, connect yourself to me so that who I am as the true vine can nourish you as the branch so that you can begin to bear fruit. As we simply connect ourselves to him, like a branch connecting itself to a vine, we will see his nourishment. We will see his life, essence. We will see who he is begin to nourish and impart life into us. But the only way we'll live in this constant place of connecting ourselves to him is if he is everything. Because if he is not everything, then you will not constantly live in a place of connecting or abiding. See, if he's not everything, then other things are something. And if other things are something, then you will pursue to connect yourself to those other things to find pleasure, to find joy, to find peace, to get nourishment. But truly, I promise you, he is the only true joy. He is the only true peace. He is the only true nourishment. He is true life. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. The only way that you'll begin to partake of true life is if you connect yourself to him and you give up everything for this one thing, Jesus. There's something beautiful that's conveyed in Ephesians 5, and I just want to encourage you with it. Listen to this verse. This is Ephesians 5:29. It says, no one ever hated his own body, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church. For we are members of his body. There's a lot in this that you can unpack, but one of the things I want to highlight is the fact that Jesus' intention, his desire is to nourish us. And why does he want to nourish us? Because he cherishes us. Because he loves us. Jesus' intention, his desire is to nourish us, to impart life into us because he loves us. This is just the heart of Jesus. This is the heart of God. Again, Jesus gave up everything to get you back. Jesus gave up laid aside his divinity and took on the nature of a bondservant and came to the earth and then said, I did not come to be served, but I came to serve. He came from heaven to earth and then said, yo, I'm here to serve you because I love you. And you know what? I'm going to go all the way to the point of dying for you so that I can get you back. I promise as you become sober to this, you'll become sober to how much he is worth and his true value. There's 5 things that I want to leave you with that really helps me just stir myself up to this realization. 5 steps, you could say. The first step is recounting. As I recount his goodness, as I remember simply who he is and what he has done for me, it brings me into this place of thankfulness. See, even David said in Psalm 63 verse 6, he says, I remember you. He says, in the night watches, as I lay to go to sleep, I remember you. David was so consumed with the thought of who he was that even when he went to go lay down and go to sleep, he couldn't help but remember God and begin to meditate on who he was. I promise as you just begin to recount who God is, what God has done for you, who he says that he is, what the scriptures have to say about him, as you begin to recount the truth about who he is, it will bring you, it'll usher you into this place of thankfulness. And thankfulness is huge. I believe that thankfulness enters you into his gates. It brings you into his courts. It brings you before him. Psalms 100 verse 4, I feel like alludes to this. It says, it's more of like a command, or at least like an encouragement. It says, enter into his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. I kind of flip it a little bit. I really believe that thanksgiving enters you into his gates. Praise begins to usher you into his court. It begins to usher you into his throne room. Now, don't get it confused. Jesus Christ, it's because of Christ and our faith in him that we can now confidently and boldly come into God's presence. This is Ephesians 3:12. It says this. It's because of Jesus and simply by putting our faith in who he is and what he has done that we can now freely and boldly and confidently step right into the presence of God. This is something that God has opened up for us to be able to have access to now because of what Jesus has done. This is one of the most beautiful things about the new covenant, that the veil has been torn and we can now enter into fellowship with God. It's beautiful. But one of the things that I believe encourages this, one of the things that will keep you in this place of constantly coming back into his courts, into his presence, is thanksgiving, is thankfulness. I believe thankfulness enters you into his gates. It brings you into his courts. And as you step into his courts, as you step into his gates, as you step into his presence, you'll have the opportunity to now behold him. And as you behold him, it will begin to sober you to who he is. It will begin to sober you to his value. It will begin to sober you to how much he is worth. And so as you begin to recount who he is, you'll begin to be filled with thankfulness. And thankfulness about who he is, what he's done for you, and all the truths that just defines God. As you begin to be thankful, it will sober you to his value, to his worth. It will sober you to who he is. And as you become sober to who he is, what begins to happen is it fills your heart with this desire to want to give him all of your attention. And as you simply give him all of your attention, you begin to make a connection with him. And it's in this connection that you'll see his nourishment, You'll begin to see who he is impart himself into you. You will see him impart his very life into you. You'll begin to see him nourish you and fill you with joy and fill you with peace. This is, I believe, one of the secrets to abiding in him. And so, the 5 things that really help me is, first, I pursue to recount who he is. And as I just simply recount what he's done for me and what the truth has to say about who he is, it just begins to fill me with thankfulness. And as I just stay in this place of thankfulness and I begin to praise just him and worship him, it sobers me all over again to his value. And as I begin to just become so sober to his value, it fills my heart with a desire just to want to give him my undivided attention. And as I give him my undivided attention, I begin to make a connection with my Father. I begin to make a connection with God, with Jesus, with the Holy Spirit. And as I make this connection, I will begin to, once again like a branch, connect myself to a vine, and I'll begin to see the nourishment that comes from the true vine, the nourishment that comes from Jesus, begin to nourish all of who I am as the branch. And so I believe this is one of the secrets to living in a constant state of seeing him as everything, so that all of who he is can nourish all of who we are. And so I pray that this encourages you, and I just encourage you, if you don't know him, if you don't really have anything to recount, because that's kind of like the first step, I believe, to this. If you don't have anything to recount because you don't know him and you haven't encountered him, I encourage you to dive into the Word, to dive into the Scriptures, to open up the Bible and say, God, I don't know you, but I want to. And I promise you, if you do that, if you truly begin to seek him with all of your heart, he will reveal himself to you. Jeremiah 29:13 says, God literally says through the prophet Jeremiah, if you seek me with all of your heart, you will find me. So I encourage you, if you don't know him, seek after him with all of your heart. Seek after him as if he is the one and only treasure, the one and only just thing that you need. If you begin to seek him like that, you will find him. I promise. He will reveal himself to you. He'll open up your eyes to who he is, and it'll change your life. And so I love you guys. I pray this blesses you, and I'll talk to you later.